I think also I was trying to write previously books that I thought would sell well because I was an editor, like full-time editor still. And I was like, okay, this is what sells, this is what people like, so I need to write something like that. But it wasn't working because it wasn't authentic. It would be me trying to emulate something else or copy something else and manufacture something that's already been done before.
Welcome to The Creative Life with Taylor, the show where we explore creative journeys, dive deep into the creative process, and hopefully inspire you to unlock your own creativity and potential in your life now. Today's guest is author Ore Agbaje-Williams. In my conversation with Ore, you'll hear how she went from a child telling stories to her sister at bedtime to becoming a published author of an acclaimed debut novel. But nobody writes a novel overnight. In this episode, you'll hear how Ore confronted doubts and failures along the way, how she remained true to her authentic voice, and how she continues to find motivation and inspiration to keep creating. I hope this episode inspires you and gives you tools to continue building your own creative life. I'm your host, Taylor Thomas Smythe, and this is The Creative Life. Let's jump in. Hello, everyone. I am here with Ore Agbaje-Williams, who is a British-Nigerian writer and editor from North London. Her first novel, The Three of Us, was published by Jonathan Cape in the UK, Putnam in the US, and Penguin Random House Canada in May 2023. She posts short fiction almost every Monday at Monday Fictions on Substack. Ore, it's great to have you.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see you, Taylor.
Thank you. Likewise. I feel like I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I read your book when it came out a few years ago, and so hopefully we'll have time to get into some of my questions and theories from that. But today we're going to talk about just your creative journey, creative process, and some of the creative habits that you've formed over your life. So before we get into your book, I would love to start with just your creative journey, kind of looking at the big picture. So let's rewind a little bit. When did you know you were creative? Is that something your family or community encouraged?
Well, I would say they discouraged it, but both of my parents are lawyers, and when you're Nigerian, usually your cousins, which is the same for me, you have a lot of cousins who are also doctors, lawyers, engineers, all that kind of stuff. And so both my sister and I, being people who she liked reading before me, I think, but who, were encouraged to read a lot actually by our parents. I don't think the creativity was necessarily like, you should be creative, but they didn't discourage it. They were like, do what you want. My dad did really encourage reading, actually, I have to say. He bought us a lot of the classics when we were younger, like the Pride and Prejudice, the Lord of the Rings, all this stuff, the Charles Dickens books. And we didn't read any of them. And I feel really bad about that now, especially because I buy books all the time. And he's never mentioned it. He's never been like, I'm bitter you didn't read those books that I bought. But I feel like if it was me in the back of my mind, I'd be like, oh, wow. So she's buying all these books now, but she couldn't read the books that I bought her. But I think, when did I know I was creative? I'm not sure if I knew I was, if I would have put the word creative to it. I knew that I liked creating things, but I guess I didn't think of myself as a creator. I didn't realize that it was being creative, that was what I was doing. But I made some songs on my mum's MacBook. She was the first in our family to get a MacBook, so I made some songs on GarageBand on her MacBook with having this one, actually. I also wrote some poetry when I was younger. But I guess I don't think I really knew that I was creative until a lot later, but I think I was creating from quite a young age. Even when we were really young and lived in our old house, my sister and I used to leave our doors open, and I would make up stories for us at bedtime. So I think
That's awesome.
I think probably from a young age, but I didn't know that it was being creative. I was just doing stuff, and I didn't know that all those things amounted to creativity.
Oh, I love that. I love when you can see the thread of, like, you were already a storyteller as a child, and then you've carried that into this more professional, kind of polished way. That's so sweet. Kind of on a related note, I'd love if you could share some of your kind of early creative influences or creativity related memories.
I think that the thing with my sister, the stories at bedtime was definitely one. And then a couple of years ago, actually, I was clearing out some stuff from my parents' house, and I found some stories that I'd written, and one of them was a short story, literally like a notebook of maybe like an A5 notebook, and it was a story about this person who's peer pressured to smoke, and at school, and she smokes, and then the next day she dies.
Oh my gosh. A
So
cautionary tale.
intense. Yeah, so I think
Amazing.
maybe part of my influence when I was younger was, okay, how can I say something, and okay, I can use the story to say something about
Mm.
it. Um, I will also say that I love to read a rom-com when I was older. They used to call it chick lit, they call it women's fiction now, but I used to read a lot of Sophie Kinsella. There was one holiday where I think my mum had to buy me 2 extra books from the Shopaholic series because I had read the one that I brought with me. I was just running through them.
Okay.
Um, and that was great. And I remember at that time, I don't think I really knew what Waterstones properly was, but I knew W.H. Smith was a thing. And so I was like, Mum, there's a W.H. Smith. Please, can we go and buy the next book? But yeah, I think stuff like that is probably early influences. I also feel like probably in some way, subconsciously, I was also influenced by the just Nigerian way of storytelling. Like you hear, even
Mm.
if you don't understand what they're saying, like I'm Yoruba, for example, and so I don't understand a lot of Yoruba, but I can understand a little bit here and there and speak a tiny
Mm.
bit. But you'll hear your aunts and uncles and they'll be telling stories in Yoruba, and you won't necessarily understand what they're saying, but you can see the way they're gesticulating and how they're talking about this
Mm.
story about this thing that's happened to this someone, because I love a bit of a gossip.
Mm-hmm.
So you would hear them talking about it and the way that they would tell it, and you'd hear the way the person's responding. They'd be like, and then we have all
Mm.
these like vocal reactions to
Yeah.
things and even physical in their body language. So I think probably in some way that kind of that kind of storytelling, even though it's just from person to person and it's like real life, I think that
Mm.
probably also influenced me as well.
That's neat. I'm kind of thinking about how that maybe, yeah, specifically influenced your storytelling in a way. I'm thinking about the three of us is very like overly dramatic, like lots of really intense drama happening. And I can imagine like thinking about how someone to react to reading this and kind of
Mm.
it being a similar dynamic to you listening to your family telling stories and that kind of feedback loop.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Um, was there a definitive turning point in your creative journey? Maybe when you went from just making things to I am a creative person. You were kind of saying you didn't necessarily recognize those things as part of creativity as a kid, but you obviously grew
Mm.
into that. Would love to hear more about that.
Ooh, that's a good question. I think the moment I don't know if there was one specific moment, but I think I found more that storytelling was my real outlet for creativity. I got into publishing, and I really wanted to do that before I even thought of being a writer. I was writing things, but I didn't think of myself as being the person who was going to be the one telling the stories. And so helping
Mm-hmm.
other people tell their stories and mold their stories was really fascinating to me. Um, but I think it's when I realized that I could find a story anywhere. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
did this thing a couple of years ago. I don't think I did it last year because I didn't go, but year before that, when I was in New York, I feel like in New York, people have, and people do it in here as well, but I feel like in New York specifically, I've noticed that people have very personal conversations very loudly. And so I
Yes.
would hear people having really personal conversations, and I would take a snippet of it and I put it on my Instagram story and be like, overheard New York, and just a snippet of what
Oh,
someone said.
yes.
Um, and this was after I'd realized that I could find stories anywhere, but I just found that just the snippets of those conversations could become a story. You could build a whole story around that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for example, I think I had these two at one point talking about their friend and how one of them wasn't invited to her birthday or something like that, or they weren't going to invite her. Um, and the way that I was like, I wonder what the story behind that is and how that works. Or I see people when I'm on the tube, or I see people walking around, and I'm like, what's their story?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other day I was at a concert with my friend, or a gig with my friend, and it was just before the gig was about to start, and so we were just sort of in this communal hangout area. And I was like, let's play a game. Let's try and guess if people are couples or if they're friends. And I think
I
just,
love
and so
it.
then we make up this, yeah, so then we just made up this story about them. Like, okay, so these two, they're not a couple, but he likes her, but she doesn't know that he likes her, or she knows, but she's just ignoring it because she's on her in their friendship and all this kind of stuff. And so I think as time's gone on, I've found that I think when I realized that, okay, I'm a creative person, this is part of my process. I
Mm,
can just find a story anywhere. That's when I realized, okay, this is who you are.
mm.
This is sort of in you. You see it everywhere you go, even when you're not working. You see it, and it's just
Yeah,
like happening.
that's beautiful. I'm curious if do you have a way you collect those ideas, and then to come back to later to write a story around them, or just in
So
your mind?
I'm Yeah. So some of them I think I've learned also. sometimes that just because I see something and it's like a cool idea, it doesn't mean that there's necessarily a story behind it. Sometimes it's just, oh, that's an observation and that could be a funny story, but I don't have a wider idea of what that story actually is. So, but more recently, especially because I'm doing the Monday fiction stuff, I've got a notebook because I'm also trying to be on my phone less. I bought a tiny notebook and I keep a pen with me. And so if I see something that I'm like, oh, that could be a cool idea, or I have an idea, I just write it down in the book. And there are a couple of ideas actually in that book I haven't written any stories for yet. And then there's one that I was like, well, that could be a short story. And then I was like, actually, that could be a novel. But I still need to figure that out more in my mind, see if it fleshes out, if there's really a fuller story there, if it is just a short story. Even though I would like it to be a novel. So yeah, I try and keep things by writing them down in my notebook. I did used to write stuff down in my notes app on my phone, which does feel like if you ever lose this, you've got it on iCloud sort of thing. But I am trying to be a little bit more analog where I can, so that I'm not 24/7 looking at a screen.
Yes, I feel that. The struggle is real. Very cool. When did you realize you had the ability to write an entire novel? It's a big undertaking.
Yeah. I guess when I finally finished the first one I ever wrote, which is not The Three of Us. Okay. It was a different book. Yeah. And it took me a long time to finish it, and then I also didn't read through it before I sent it to my agent, and I was like, here you go, bye.
Oh my word.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess then, but even then, sometimes I'll write stuff and I'll get filed and I'll be like, this just isn't working. And I'll try writing 6, 7, 8 different versions of it. Not the whole thing, but just starting it in different ways. And I'll just find that, no, this isn't working. And you just need to sort of leave it alone. But I think when I finally finished that book, probably, and I was like, okay, fine, this is done. I think that's why I didn't want to bother to read through it, because I was like, oh gosh, finally, I'm just going to get it off my desk and send it to somebody else. And they can read it and tell me what they think, but I'm over it at this point. So yeah, I think when I finished that first one, and then I've been finishing stuff, not necessarily publishing it, but finishing stuff ever since. And I do think though that trial and error is maybe part of my process. Like, you might write something, you read it through, and you're like, no, that's okay, I'm gonna leave it to one side. Maybe I'll come back to it later, maybe I won't. But I've gone through it, and then it takes me to the next step.
Love that. That's awesome. Speaking of your novels, you released your debut novel, The Three of Us, in 2023, and it was met with a lot of buzz and excitement, which I would say rightly so. It was great. Can you share a bit about what that journey was like for you, going from just the idea of it to writing it, publishing it, and everything in between?
Yeah. So as I said, I'd written the other previous novel, sent it to my agent, and she sent the editorial notes back. And then I was just looking at the book and I was like, I don't even like this. And I feel like you need to like the book to be able to publish it and like to get other people to want to read it.
Absolutely.
So I sort of put that to one side, and then I tried to write a bunch of other different ideas and didn't finish any of those ones. And a lot of those ideas I went through while I was on furlough, because I was on furlough in 2020. And so I came back, and this was November of 2020. Yeah, November 2020. And I was like, okay, I had this idea based on a conversation I had with my friend, and I was like, oh, this sounds like this could be a good idea. And there was something called NaNoWriMo, which really sadly has closed down. It was it's called National Novel Writing
Month.
National Novel. Yeah, but it's like, because it's no, you're right, National Novel Writing Month. I was going to say NaNoWriMo because it's always in November, but it is National Novel Writing Month. You're correct. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try that. And I'm supposed to write, I think, like 1,000 words a day, or how you're supposed to set your own targets anyway. And it's not always that you have to finish the novel in that month, but you're supposed to hit certain target and that kind of thing. So I said, okay, I'm going to commit to writing for this period of time. And some days, and you're supposed to also update a tracker. And I had a friend of mine who was also writing a novel, and we were like, okay, let's be accountable to each other. I don't think we really were, if I'm honest, but we both now have books out, and she's on her 3rd book, so she's doing amazing. But I some days I went to the tracker, and I just I'd go to the document, I'd put 2 words in, and I'd update the tracker with that 2 words, just to have something to update in it.
Yeah. Progress.
But eventually it got to, because I started it like mid to late November, it got to just before the end of December, and I was like, I finished it. I think it was something stupid like I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning. Again, didn't read it through. I just sent it off to my agent, and I was like, "Here you go." But I think the thing with that idea is that I had the first line from the get-go, and the first line of the book has not changed since the first time I wrote it.
Love that.
Well, since I started it, and I just felt that the idea. I think also I was trying to write previously books that I thought would sell well because I was an editor, like full-time editor still. In-house full-time editor, and I was like, okay, this is what sells, this is what people like, so I need to write something like that. But it wasn't working because it wasn't authentic. I didn't write like that. I read stuff like that, but it didn't feel like something that I could actually do in a way that would be good. It would be me trying to emulate something else or copy something else and manufacture something that's already been done before. So when I found this idea for the three of us, I was like, okay, this works. I like this voice, I like the style, this works for me. So then, I sent it up to my agent, and then she got back to me in January, I think late January. And she called me, and she was like, I really like this. I really love the voice. This is great. I'm so excited by this. And I was like, okay, good, because I did not read through that thing. I don't know what I wrote. So you're discovering it at the same time I am.
Incredible.
And she was like, I want to do some edits on it to like get it really sharp. And she gave me some really great notes about the ending, because the ending was very different at first, and it was pretty lackluster, actually, if I'm honest. And she didn't even say you need to make this ending exactly like this specifically. She just said, you need to raise the stakes. We need some more payoff. We need, we've had this building tension throughout this afternoon. We need some higher stakes here. Like, we need something else that's more explosive. And so thinking about that is really then what good idea for the ending and the way that it is. And then we did edits, and then we sent it out to publishers, and I ended up signing to Jonathan Cape in the UK and Putnam in the US. It had great editors, and it was quite an interesting experience because I was also still an editor at the time I was being edited. So it was funny being on both sides of it. And I did gain a new respect for my authors that I'd worked with, and ones that I have now. I have a newfound sympathy, because it is really something when someone's like, I love this book, it's so amazing, and then you get your editorial notes back and like there's red everywhere, and you're like, I thought you liked the book. Why is there so much red? What's going on here? But it was really fun. They definitely helped me to really enhance the book, make it sharper, build out and really flesh out the characters more, make them more 3D. And it was also exciting, like hearing all these amazing ideas that the publishing teams have for the book, and the things they wanted to do with it, like marketing. In America, we did this marketing with this nail varnish brand, and also a whiskey brand. When I went in to see my UK publishers, they had like Snickers bars because there's Snickers mentioned in the book.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and it was just so lovely just to see that people had this passion about the book, this thing that's just been essentially sitting in your head and your agent's head for so long, and then suddenly other people have all these ideas about it, and this whole world is more tangible than it's ever been, than just on a Word document page. So yeah, it was amazing. And then connecting with readers and having people read it and respond. I think one of my favorite things, or two of my favorite things, was particularly in the US, actually, there was a day when the book came out, loads of US booksellers, particularly indie booksellers, tagged me, messaged me, posted about the book. It was incredible. I was like, you are a vast country, and all these people from all over posting about this book is amazing. And then also I've just loved, and I still get stuff to this day, people messaging like, I've just read this book, I loved it, when is the sequel coming out, all this kind of stuff. And it's just incredible. And obviously you have people who don't like the book, which is perfectly within their rights not to, or perfectly within their rights to not like the book, but it's still amazing to have people who have bought it and read it and have any kind of experience of it. The only experience of it I don't agree with is Goodreads. I don't agree with that place. So whatever experience people are having on Goodreads, I don't want to be involved with. But all the others are good. So
yeah, people on Goodreads are much harsher than other places in reviews, at least.
Yeah.
To put it lightly. You mentioned the whiskey involved in the marketing, which reminded me that when I was reading this book, I was just, as a graphic designer, hoping for or envisioning like an infographic that showed all the consumption of alcohol throughout, like how many bottles of wine and everything were consumed. So I still need to make that, because I just want to visualize that, because it's a lot. It would be a very busy graphic.
No, for sure. And my US editor, actually, she made a really good point when we first did edit. She was like, by the way, currently they consume, I think she said like 8 bottles of wine and a bottle of whiskey. And she was like, I think that we probably need to pare that back. And I was like, oh my gosh, lol. because every time I was just like, and another bottle, and another bottle, and
Uh-huh.
another bottle, and I wasn't tallying it up. So I was like, okay, yeah, I do need to go back and make sure that they're not like paralytic by the time we get to the end of the novel.
They said raise the stakes, and you were just, ramping things up. Before we move on from talking about your book, I have to share that, like I said, a few years ago, I was in a book club, and we chose this book to read, and it was a really fun conversation around it. But one thing I remember was a theory that came out of this book club that Temi, so the book follows three characters. There's a husband and wife, and then the wife's best friend, Temi. Right? Is that her name? Yeah,
Yes.
Temi.
Yeah.
The theory is that Temi is just in their minds, that she was not a real person. Have you heard that theory before?
I have not, but that's amazing. This is why I love books though, like, and this kind of creative stuff, because you think you have this whole world, but then
Mm-hmm.
other people can make something else out of it. And like when people even say to me like, oh, the ending, did she do it? Did she not do it? And I was like, that's not for me to decide. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've created this world. It's for you to fill in the rest of the gaps, like fully. And I'm not even doing that to be like, ooh, I'm very pretentious and I'm this author and I'm very above, this kind of thing. But like, just genuinely what it is. I've never heard that theory before. That is so fascinating. I love that.
I did too. I was like, wow, I need to reread the book now and see if that holds, because, yeah. Just wanted to share that. Kind of finishing up our section on like your creative journey, I would love to kind of cap that off by asking, how do you define success in your creative work? And what does success look like maybe now versus earlier in your career or life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Originally when I started, I think probably with that same editor's hat on, in my mind, success was you're a Sunday Times bestseller, you're a New York Times bestseller, your book is optioned for this, your book is optioned for that. You sell hundreds of thousands of copies, all this kind of stuff. And that's all stuff that I learned from being in publishing. That's what they told us that's what we were told and not we were taught success was. But none of those things happened to me. But that's not a bad thing, because my book is still successful. I think in the first instance, the thing that I always remember is I had a book published. So many people write stories for years and they never get their books published. They never get an audience. They never get, even, people close to them to read their stuff. And so I was like, it's a privilege and a success in itself that I am getting my book published. And particularly as a Black woman who's writing sort of literary commercial fiction, even though there are a lot more Black women doing that in the UK now, a few years ago, it wasn't like that. We were thin on the ground. So the fact that I was able to be published is incredible on its own. And then the second thing, which I think is something I touched on a few minutes ago, was also just having people read the book and having people engage with me about it and tell me that they've read it. The fact that you went to a book club that chose the book is insane to me. Like, it's just amazing. And to have people messaging me and saying, I've read it and enjoyed it, I've read it and I didn't like it, but like, interested to see what you do next. Like, just anything like that is incredible to me. And the idea that people want to talk to me about it, it's just amazing. And if I go into a bookshop and I see it now, I'm still like, oh, how cool, this book is there. That's so nice. It exists still in the world. So I think it's definitely changed from my original perception. And now it's just like, if people are reading it and engaging with it and having any kind of experience of it, that's success to me. Because the parameters of the other kind of success are always moving. It's always, you have to sell 50,000 copies to be successful. You have to sell 100,000 or 200,000. You have to be longlisted or shortlisted for X, Y, Z. But when those things are always changing, you're never going to be happy with what you've got. And so I think starting from the base level of, I've been published and that's huge, and people are reading my book, that's huge, then you're going to be happy and you are immediately successful for the rest of your life.
That's beautiful. Yeah, encouraging. Yeah, love that. Thank you. I kind of want to shift into more talking about your creative process, how you create, how you come up with ideas. We talked a little bit about the ideas part already, but maybe specifically talk about with the three of us, how did that idea come about? What were some of the influences? I vaguely remember reading something or watching an interview or something with you when the book came out that maybe there was like reality TV was involved in influencing it. But if that's true, I don't remember that. But yeah, how did you know that idea was working? Where did it come from? How did you know it had potential to become a full novel or story?
Yeah, so I was bored like everybody else during lockdown in sort of September, October 2020, and I was on the phone with my best friend Grace, who actually now lives in Canada. But I was talking about this guy that I'd been talking to on Hinge, and I was like, oh, I really like him. And she was like, oh, am I going to get a boyfriend and I'm never going to see you? And I was like, no, he has to understand that you come first, which was like half a joke. Ultimately, it was true. She was more important than him. But I then sort of wondered, how interesting. What if, they met and they didn't get along and, it was this whole awkward situation? And I was like, what if there was a husband and a wife and the friend didn't get along with the husband? Like, what would that be like? And then I started with that line, Temmie comes over at 12. And I think the reality TV influence you're thinking about is the reference where the wife says to the husband, Kim, there's people that are dying, which is from Keeping Up with the Kardashians, which is one of the most iconic reality TV quotes of all time.
I love it.
It's so good. It's like it should have its own prize. Shout out Kourtney Kardashian. I think I realized that I love the messiness of sometimes those reality TV shows and comments like that. But I love the messiness of people's drama when they have this drama going on in their lives, and it's just ridiculous and it's messy and it's like, ugh. But it's fun because you're watching it from afar. You're not within the drama. And I think the moment I had that first lie, I knew, because it starts and ends with Temmie, quite literally. It starts and ends with her. And so I was like, oh, it'd be really interesting just to see where this goes. And at first I actually started off with just the wife's perspective. And then I was like, I am so bored of this woman. I'm so bored. I was like, I want to know what her husband and the best friend are thinking. So then I started working on the husband and the best friend. But by the time we actually sent the book out, I still think that the husband and Temmie had been fleshed out a little bit more. But when I did with my two editors, they then really helped me to flesh out. They're like, they were like, Temmie's a bit 2D right now. So as a husband, we need to like give them a bit more life and a bit more spark. And that was quite fun, sort of delving into their psyches and also figuring out what the difference in all their voices was. Because when you're in your head, you're thinking just with one voice. You don't think about the way that someone else is speaking unless you're in conversation with them, you're particularly thinking about it. But when you're writing, you're just like, okay, this is the one voice, unless you've got like dual characters. And so that was the first time I was writing multiple characters in that way with first person voices. And so I was like, okay, I need to really figure this out. And like, how does this work? And what do they talk like? How do they think? What are their different idiosyncrasies? Are they lying to themselves about anything? Are they being deceptive to themselves and other people? And that was just so much fun. I think, honestly, I just really enjoyed writing it. I had a lot of fun with it. It was really, it was also really exciting to put some like Nigerianisms in there, like the way that people spoke and like funny stereotypes that can at times be true. And I think, it was just really enjoyable to be a part of all these people and their drama without the drama being related to me.
Yes, right. That, I think you can tell, or I could tell reading it, that like you had a lot of fun with it. The characters are really fun and fleshed out, and I'm glad that you really enjoyed that process too. I'm curious, what's the most surprising place or moment where you've received inspiration for a story or creative project?
Ooh, that's a good question. What is the most surprising place? I'm trying to think now. So this is more recent. I don't know if it's so surprising. It's usually when I'm out somewhere. It's very rarely when I'm just sat down at my desk working. It's usually when I'm out somewhere and I'm observing other people. But it's a story. It's actually them as the basis of a story I wrote from my Monday Fictions Substack. But I was walking back. I was walking to the train. I was walking away from a train station. I was walking into Shoreditch, and I saw this guy, this really nice Mercedes. I think he was East African, I think, and he had this really nice black Mercedes, and he was opening the boot of the Mercedes, and I think there was like a suit jacket inside the boot of the car. And I thought to myself, and then I think there was someone walking past and like looking, I think, and I thought to myself, I bet that person thinks, oh, he's a driver, but he's the driver of the car, but he doesn't own the car. And in my mind, I was like, but I bet that he owns the car. I bet that he's really good with his money. He works really hard. He owns that car. He keeps it pristine. That suit is either his or it's for a client who's just getting out of the boot for him or something like that. But his story is not the story that it's like it is. And people might just assume, oh, because he's East African and maybe he's an immigrant, that it's not his car, but it is his car. And so then I wrote this whole short story about this guy who's like a private car, a private chauffeur, but he owns his car, and about all the clients that he picks up on this one day and how they have all these different relationships with him. And I literally that was just from looking at this guy opening the boot of his car. But in my mind, that's where all that came from. So it usually is just out and about. I'm trying to think if I did then the other day see all these really young people outside of like a hotel venue, and they all looked like they were dressed for like a wedding. I was like, you guys are really young to be attending a wedding. And in my mind, I was like, I wonder if they're there for the wedding of these two like young people who've just decided to get married really, really young. And they're all a bit like, this is weird that we're here for a wedding because we're like 18 years old, but like, we'll come support you, whatever. And so that's what it was then in my mind. I was like, I wonder if there's a story of people who got married really young, or their friends don't really understand why, but they'd come there to support them anyway. So yeah, usually out and about. Sometimes someone will say something to me and I'll be like, huh, interesting. I wonder if that's, but then it might then come to where I might forget about it. But yeah, usually short story long, it's usually when I'm out and about.
Very cool. As you're talking about your inspiration, I'm hearing a couple of phrases recurring, which are "what if" and "I wonder." I think those are great questions to ask that kind of lead you to, or force you almost to like think about what comes next and see where this story could lead. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about, we're going to get a little heavier here. Can you tell me about a time or times when you doubted yourself or your creative ability? What sort of pressures did you feel when working on your debut? I don't know if there's any doubts or things like that connected to that experience, but.
Yeah. So the funny thing is I feel doubt all the time. I don't know if you feel the same way when you're writing something or creating something and you're in the middle of it, or it gets hard and you're like, oh, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. I don't know if this is even any good. I think the thing that helped with the three of us was that I didn't, not that I didn't care because I wanted to give my agent something to sell, but I didn't feel any massive pressure in terms of I have to deliver a certain number of sales for anybody. I think when the book was coming out, I felt that way. I was like, oh, I feel like I need to deliver a certain number of sales. I feel like I need to do this and this and this. I need to be talking about the book. I need to be here and there and well, everywhere else. But I was writing, it was just like, this is kind of fun. I hope this is good, but I don't really know. I think before that, though, in the run up to writing that book, when I was trying to write other things, I doubted myself a lot. And that's because I wasn't being authentic to myself. And even with working on a second book, I've had so many moments of doubt. Like, maybe you just shouldn't do this anymore. Maybe this just isn't working. And maybe, you know, you need to go back to this thing. Or maybe you should try to do a really generic thing because it works and people will buy that. And I think the thing that just keeps me going is remember that you see stories everywhere. You are still going to continue to see stories and find stories, and you're going to continue to want to write them. So you just need to do that. And I think actually starting to write stories every week has sort of forced me to write, well, not sort of, it has forced me to write in a way that means I'm just going direct to consumer. It's not going through anybody, it's not going through any channels. The only expectation is from me, from myself, that there will be another story that I will be telling in a week's time. And that has been really important, and also means that I can just start to enjoy writing again, because and obviously hugely aware that it's a privilege to be published, massive privilege, but there can also come pressure when you're like, okay, you've got one book out, now you've got to write the second book. You want to meet and surpass expectations. And I always, as a writer, want to get better. I want to do better than I did before. And so I think with trying to write a second book and then also having the Substack thing, I'm like, actually, you need to find a way outside of that, writing the second book, to also find a way to keep writing for yourself in a way that really works for you and make sure you keep enjoying it. But every time there's doubt, and even one of my favorite things actually about Substack is people will post like on the sort of notes page where either the homepage, people just post their notes and stuff like that. So people will write stuff like, me to my 3 subscribers. Hi all, I've been getting questions about my skincare routine, like stuff like that. Like I love when people write stuff, it's just so fun. But then they'll get like 1,000 likes on that one post where they're taking the mick out of how few subscribers they have. And so even sometimes like I'll write a story and maybe we'll get like a few likes as opposed to the amount of likes I got on a previous story. But I'm just like, just keep posting. Yeah. It's not about how many likes you get. It's just the fact that you keep writing and you keep testing yourself and you keep exercising that muscle and you keep finding a story somewhere. And also sometimes those stories that I write, I might be like, oh, actually, I feel like I could flesh this out some more and it could become something else. And I think it's just important for me to just keep going and keep going. And I actually have that tattooed on my elbows, to keep going. So every moment of self-doubt is like, okay, cool. And then again, and then we go again, and then we go again. But yeah, it's all the time. I don't have any level of certainty in myself. The only level of certainty I have is that I will just try and keep going. That's the only thing. Doubt will always be there, but it's what you do about the doubt, I feel like, that makes the difference.
Oh, I love that. It's a great mindset to have. Kind of on a related note, what's a time where you have failed or felt like you failed creatively and had to redirect?
So when I was doing publicity for the three of us, I was asked by a magazine to write a piece. I think it was, I can't remember exactly what it was about but it was something like, it was a non-fiction piece about relationships or something adjacent, something like that. And I spent ages writing things because I was like, I don't know how to do this, guys. I was like, I don't write nonfiction. This is not my bag. Anyway, I tried and tried and tried. Eventually wrote something, sent it to them, didn't hear back for weeks. And they were like, we think we're just going to go with an interview with you actually instead. And I was like,
Oh
okay,
boy.
it's fine. And I was like, gosh, loads of people, loads of writers I know who write fiction and are excellent. I read a lot of their Substacks. They're excellent at writing nonfiction, writing about themselves. I'm just not, that's just not my ministry. But that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think I just had to come to terms with that. And at the time I did feel like I'd failed because I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity and, you know, to exercise my voice more and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, you sort of scuppered that opportunity. But then I was like, actually, it's okay. You can't be everything everywhere all at once. Word to that film. But you can just do what you can do. And also, I still got the opportunity to be in a magazine by being interviewed.
That's huge.
And also, it meant that I didn't then struggle for ages, or I didn't put out something that was really mediocre, that was not authentic to me, or that wasn't good enough. I'm happier that that didn't go out being bad, and then that I didn't get to do it, than that I didn't get to write a nonfiction piece. I prefer doing something different and pivoting. And I think also it just reminded me that I'm human and I'm fallible, and as much as I can do loads of things, I can't do that, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's an important lesson to learn, that you can't do everything, and that helped you maybe channel your energy more into the things that are your strengths, so you can continue to build them, your fiction writing. Kind of on the flip side of failure, I would love to hear about something you've created that you're really proud of. It does not even have to be something that was successful or published, but just like you personally are proud of it.
Yeah. So when I was still working full-time in publishing, I was working at HarperCollins in the UK. My friend Nancy and I, who's also Nigerian, she said something to me and it just sparked an idea in my head. And so then we were texting on WhatsApp about it. And we were like, we want to create this collection of essays from Nigerian writers about what Nigeria is to them, what they feel like it means, what it looks like, how they experience it. And so we assembled, I should have picked the book from the shelf, but we assembled a group of 24 Nigerian writers, including one who won an essay competition for an open submission for new, like, up-and-coming Nigerian writers. Okay. And we had writers in there like Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, Abi Dare, Chigozie Obioma, like loads of Helen Habila, loads of huge authors. And I'm so proud of that book, because to this day I have people saying to me, that book is amazing. A couple of weeks ago I was at my friend's book event, and this woman who's a book influencer, she said to me, I recommend that book to people all the time. I read that book once a year. I go back and read my favorite essays. And I just, that working on that book was deeply stressful. We had a really short timeline in which to make it work, because we wanted to tie it in with the 50th anniversary of independence for Nigeria. Okay. And that was great, but also like really stressful, because I had to get all the contracts signed, and all these people had all these different agents, had these different changes they wanted to make. Then I had to make sure that all the essays were good, and had to do the editorial rounds with them, had to do line edits, then had to send it off for copy editing. At the same time, we were trying to figure out the different collaborations we could do. At the same time as that, I was doing the rest of my job and working with my other authors and reading submissions. And then also I was reading for we have something in the UK called the Women's Prize, which is like a women's prize for fiction, although it's also non-fiction now. They have a fiction prize and a non-fiction prize. And they have a Discoveries Prize for unpublished authors. And so I was having to read, I think it was 100 entries that were, I think, up to 10,000 words each. I think it was something like that. And I had to do it in this short space of time. I was so stressed and burnt out. I actually could not believe I was alive by the end of it. But the fact that we got that book over the line, and that it was, people loved it. And we did like a collaboration with Spotify, like, which was so cool. We got great coverage, that the authors are really proud of it, and that book exists alone is just amazing. And I've had people say like, oh, I really want to create something like that for Ghana, I really want to create something like that for Jamaica, and I'm just like, that's incredible. I love that has sparked stuff like that as well. And I'm so proud of us for doing that book, and I'm really glad that I got backing from my publisher as well to be able to do something like that. I feel like in today's climate we wouldn't be able to do something like that, but I think in the wake of everything that had happened and the years leading up to it, we had an opening where they were more open to doing stuff like that.
Cool.
But that is absolutely by far and away a career highlight for me. I will forever be proud of that book. And I remember I saw it in was in Paris a couple of years ago for my friend's birthday, and we went to Shakespeare and Company, like the really famous bookshop there. And I found a copy of the book there, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to Paris. This is great.
Oh, that's got to be the best feeling of seeing something you worked on in another country, or like on the actual, on the shelves.
Yeah.
That's really special. We can add that in the show notes if people want to check it out, and also your other book. So make sure that's linked. Kind of shifting into our last kind of sections here, I would love to hear about your creative habits and any current projects. So let's start with, tell me about your writing process or creative process, any practices or habits, tools or rhythms that help you create things.
Yeah. I think I've learned that the best way for me to write is to treat it like a 9 to 5. And I think if I don't do that, then I can dilly-dally for days. And I didn't even mean to use triple alliteration just then, but it just happened. But I
She's
really
an author.
can. I can faff and I can procrastinate like the next person. I really can. And I found that being freelance, that if you just sit around all day and you just be like, oh, I'll just wait when I feel like it, you won't get things done. And then you'll be stressed because you'll have all these deadlines. And so I found that actually, if I sit down and I say, okay, I'm going to start work at 9:30, I'm going to take a lunch break again. Then I'm going to get back to work at 2 p.m. Then I'm going to work until 5:30. Then I'm having a work day. I'm having a break. But I know that I'm committed to sitting down in front of my laptop and working for at least a specific amount of time. I've also found that actually, I don't love planning books. I really like to be swept away by the wind, see where the wind blows me in terms of what's going to happen in the book. Sure. But I have also found that with books I've tried to write, that hasn't always worked. And that sometimes you do need a framework to make sure that things are going somewhere, that something is happening. And so with the book that I've been working on most recently, I also hate research, I will say. But with the book I've been working on most recently, which is why you'll never find me writing historical fiction, just never. Well, I say that and then I might write some historical fiction at some point, but for the moment, hate it. Not historical fiction, just the research part.
Sure.
But I did loads of research. It's a book about relationships, which seems to be my bag. And I did so much research. I was watching rom-coms. I got to rewatch How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I watched The Materialist, that film that came out last year. I also found myself on Reddit. I was watching couples therapy episodes. It was just fascinating and reading articles. There's something I discovered called hermeneutic labor, which is the practice of women having to unearth what men's feelings are because men don't tell them. And that's called hermeneutic labor.
Oh,
yeah.
Fascinating.
You learn something new every day, yeah. I didn't even know that was a thing until I saw it, and I was like, wow.
Incredible.
And I learned more about, oh my gosh, what's this guy's name? He's not Joe Rogan, but he's like Jordan Peterson. I learned what Jordan Peterson is all about. I didn't really know. I just thought he was like, I mean, I think I kind of thought he was a bit Andrew Tate-y, but he's not Andrew Tate, but he's like, he's himself. Anyway, and so I found out about that, and it was just really fascinating. And I was like, this is very interesting. I didn't know all of this stuff. I think doing that then helped me to set up a framework, because what I did from all that research is I then pulled out a bunch of different topics. And then I thought to myself, okay, what do I want to explore from those topics? What do I want to pull out and therefore show in the book? And then I made a list of all those things, and then I numbered them, and then I put them into different parts of the book. So like, okay, this topic's going to go here, this topic's going to go here, this topic's going to go here. And that meant that the conversations and things happening in the book had a sort of at least a subject framework that meant I knew that I was going to be hitting all those topics as I was writing. And that was actually fun, but I think it's because it's a fun, like, relationships are a fun subject matter.
Yeah.
I feel like if I was writing about, I don't know, computer science, I would not have as much fun. But like,
probably not.
Yeah, but I think that made research fun for me in a way that I didn't realize it could be. But yeah, I think it probably will vary for each book how that planning process works. But I did really enjoy that. But yeah, I think the core thing that I do is really keep it as like a 9 to 5 and make sure I have a structure to my day. I have also found that there was an author I interviewed a few years, Anna Evans, who's amazing. And she said to me that she likes to read poetry before she starts writing to get into the rhythms of language. And I was like, oh, interesting.
I like that.
I don't read poetry to get into it, but I do try and do some reading. I try and read for like 30 minutes to an hour before I start working. Okay. Even when I'm doing like freelance work, just to get my mind like ready to work, but also relax in a way. And it helps if I'm reading something that I'm enjoying, because it just helps to relax me. It also means that I'm not looking at a screen first thing when I'm working. And I think that helps me to get into the rhythms of language or of storytelling, whichever it is. And that's been a good practice for me over the last, I want to say, like 8 months, I want to say.
That's great advice, and great to hear your process and structure. That I find the same thing. Like, you really need to plan for creativity to happen. It won't just, like, you can't just expect it to sort of spontaneously happen all the time. Sometimes that happens, but if you're actually trying to get something accomplished, not so much. You started to talk about what you're reading. I would love to hear more about what have you been reading lately.
I'm gonna get my phone up because I keep a list on my phone.
I love it. I love this guide too.
Yes, because then I'm like, okay, I can recommend stuff to people. The books that I have heart eyes by this year, although one of them I'm realizing does not have heart eyes by it, which is strange because I definitely love that book. But the books that I've really loved this year, there are 3 that have really stood out to me. There's a book called Transcription by Ben Lerner. And I'd never read any Ben Lerner. He's like massive in the States apparently, but I'd heard of him, but I'd never read any of his stuff. It just never occurred to me to read it. And then I saw that one of his books was really slim, and it was about this guy who he's supposed to go and record talking to his mentor for an interview, and he drops his phone in the water, I think, or in the toilet, I think, or in the sink, and he can no longer use the phone. So you have to go and just talk to him and try and recall stuff. And it's about recollection and memory and technology and parenthood. And it's just, the book starts off, I was like, oh, I like the writing. The writing's cool. And then the third part of the book just blew me away. I was reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, it's just incredible. Then I read a book called Kingfisher by Rosie Kelly, which my friend Derek had been recommending to me for ages. He'd been saying, oh, this book is amazing, this book is amazing. And I was like, okay, calm down. But then I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, no, this book is incredible. I love this so much. Then Derek himself, he's also written a book called The Recovery Hat, which is about this young black man who is at a recovery and mental health facility, a recovery house. And when I tell you, I think that book is perfect, I'm not joking. I'm being completely serious. I think it's probably top 3 best books I've ever read. Wow. And I cannot wait for it to come out. It comes out in September, and I cannot wait for it to come out because it's just outstanding. There's a line from it. If my mum listens to this, she's going to be annoyed. I haven't made a decision yet, but there's a line from it that I've been like, I think I want to get that tattooed because the line is just so incredible.
Wow.
The line says, and it's not really a spoiler, but the line is, and so I learned to pray so I could pray for her. And I just think that is incredible. And particularly within the context of the book, it was just so beautiful to me. I remember I had the PDF, and so I was reading it on my laptop, and I would take a picture of my laptop, highlight the line, and then send it to him, be like, oh my gosh, I love this. Oh my gosh, I love this. And he was like, oh, thanks. He's a very demure guy. So he was just like, oh, thanks so much. That's so kind of you. And then another book that I read this year that I still am like, I can't believe, I don't know how she did this with this book. On the cover of the book, it's a proof, it says, get ready to yearn. Which I was like, oh, this is interesting.
Love.
But the book is called We Go Way Back by a woman called Neve Connolly. And it's about these 2 childhood friends and their relationship over like a couple of decades. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful. And I could not stop thinking about it for a few weeks. I think I've calmed down now, but I could not stop thinking about it for ages. I messaged my friend who's the editor and I was like, this book is insane. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is real. And I'm so excited for that book to come out because people are going to love it. It's just incredible. She does the relationship building so beautifully, and she's just amazing. And then my friend also released a book a couple of months ago, which is absolutely outstanding, and it's about the Windrush experience in the UK, and it's called Smalley. And it's beautiful. It's a really, really beautiful book. And he has this way of using language that is, I feel like poetic is it almost downplays and do it justice. I feel like he has a handle on language that you can use it in this almost musical way.
Cool.
And it just reads so beautifully, but the story is also so powerful and really important as well, because a lot of people don't know enough about the Windrush experience and that whole scandal. And it sheds light on it, but in just an informative but also really powerful way. And so I love that. And then I've also just last night, started reading Olive Kitteridge by Elizabeth Strout. I've never read any Elizabeth Strout before. People rave about her. like there are a bunch of friends I'm in a sort of group chat with, and they are all like, "Oh yeah, she's amazing." And I'm like, "Why is everybody so obsessed with this lady?" And I started reading her book last night, and I was like, okay, "I'm just gonna read a couple more pages, and I'm just gonna read a couple more, and I'm just gonna read a couple more." And I was like, "I need to go to bed." And I was like, "Okay, I think I get it now because now I'm obsessed, and I don't know why." Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
So yeah, those are the things I've been reading.
Okay, I've got a lot of Ori's heart eye emojis books to add to my TBR list now.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing those. We are getting close to time, but a couple more questions. Would love to hear, what are you working on right now? And how does that feel, exciting for you or energizing? What's that process been like?
It's been a long process because I've been trying to write a second book for a while. As I said before, I think trial and error is kind of my process. You try some things, maybe they don't work. You try some others, maybe they don't work. You try something else. Okay, maybe this works. I'm writing something that I suppose in some ways could be considered experimental, but that's just in terms of the form. Okay. So it's another novel, so fiction, and the best way to describe it is about perfection in relationships and whether that is realistic, attainable, idealistic, and whether or not it's something that people actually want or if it's just something that we say we all want. And so being able to do all that research and finding all that stuff about hermeneutic labor, which I didn't know about, and all that kind of stuff was really fascinating. And then the book also contains audio transcripts and Substack posts and monologues. And I remember actually one of my friends, she recommended a book to me that then made me decide to put monologues in the book, which is a book called The Fall by Albert Camus. Okay. He's the author who also wrote a book called The Stranger, or some places called The Outsider, which is like a really famous novel. And he's a French-Nigerian author. And that book is just one entire monologue. So you get him talking to this man, the main character talking to this other man, but you don't hear what the other man is saying. You get his responses to what the other man is saying. You don't hear what the other man is saying. And I was like, that's so fascinating. Yeah. I was like, I'm fascinated by the role that plays in a book and how it informs your understanding of that person in the conversation when you can only hear one side of it. And the idea of perception, which again is another part of relationships, and this idea of what perception is like and a perception of perfection. And also this idea of envy and jealousy and what that looks like in other people's relationships, and whether we know the full truth of someone else's relationship that we believe that we're envious of, or that we decide that we want that is something that we should be attaining. So yeah, working on that, exciting. Which is fun. And hopefully we'll have some more news early next year, maybe.
Fantastic. And another project you're working on, you mentioned it, but you talked about Monday Fictions. Where can people find that, and tell me more about what that is for you?
Yeah, so that's me on Substack, which for a long time I was like, I have nothing to say. I'm not starting a Substack. People were like, you should start a Substack, and I was like, why? I have nothing to say, especially because what I saw on Substack wasn't really any fiction. It was just mostly nonfiction, which is cool. But as we know, I can't write that. So I was like, this is not my bag. And I tried. My first post on Substack was actually nonfiction. And that was in February or like early March. And then I read it back and I was like, why did I do this? This is not me. I don't believe in this at all. So I was like, let's stop this now. And then I was like, do you know what I do like doing though? I like fiction and I like short stories. And they don't even have to be very, I think the one I posted this past Monday, when I just gone, was fine. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. But I was like, we're going to post something. And there have been times where I've been like, you should give yourself a break and you shouldn't have to write something every Monday. But then I was like, sure, but also it's a good challenge. And also it's good to put something out that's not perfect and to just put it out there and see what happens with it. And also just to practice. It's good practice. So yeah, almost, hopefully, at the moment, every Monday, but almost every Monday. Probably in the future, I probably will take a break because it's a lot.
Deserve it.
But thanks. I am posting fiction, short pieces of fiction. Although there's one piece of poetry on there, but short fiction every Monday. And not all of that fiction is written fresh. Some of it is like stuff from the archives that I've unearthed and edited and been like, oh, I could use this. I can relax myself for today because I could just edit this and then post it.
Yes, love it.
I think shortly I will run out of things from the archives, and then I will have to start building up a bank of things to put in the archives. But yeah, it's just been really fun, and I'm really enjoying it. And one of the first posts I think gained a bit more traction on there. I wrote, someone commented, I think you should write always and all the time or something like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know you, but thank you so much. And that just really gave me the impetus and the courage to keep going and just see where it goes and just keep enjoying it and see what other stories I unearth and carry my little notebook and write down any stories I have. I can see when I'm outside, all the what ifs and I wonders that you were saying, and see where that takes me.
Beautiful. I've enjoyed reading the last few weeks of them and will continue to do so. If you're watching or listening to this, I'll put the link to your Substack in the show notes. Our last question here, as we wrap up, I would love to hear what's one piece of advice you would give to someone pursuing this line of creative work, of writing, or any creative work?
Can I give two?
Sure.
Okay. The first one would be, and they're both things that we touched on. The first thing would be define success for yourself before you start. And make sure that success does not rely on other people saying yes or no to you. Make sure that it's something that's within your control. Because if it's success that relies on other people, you're always going to be disappointed because someone's going to not do what you want, not say what you want, all this kind of stuff. Make sure that you have an idea of success that is to do with you and you alone. And then the second thing I would say is keep going. Dust yourself off, try again. Dust yourself off, try again. It will be really hard sometimes. You will feel like you get knocked down 1,000 times and you get up 1,001 times. But you just have to get up and you have to keep going and keep finding ways of doing it for reasons that you love, and make sure that you still love it. In some way or another, make sure there's a small fraction of it that's just for you that you can make sure that means you still love it. Because when you get into when you start sharing it, you can get caught up in other people's opinions and you might start to dislike things just because someone else doesn't like it. But remember that the story begins and ends with you in terms of that creative process. And so you need to keep loving it. So just keep going and keep enjoying it and don't give up. Because when you give up, that means you're not telling stories or creating the thing you want to create anymore, and you have every right to create what you want to create.
I love that. That's a great way to finish our conversation. Thank you, Ore, for being on the podcast. I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's been a pleasure.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and if you're looking for your next great read, I've put links to Ore's work in the show notes. One thing that really stuck out to me in my conversation with Ore was how she maintained a posture of curiosity throughout her life. She would pose questions like, what if, and I wonder, which became doorways into new and unexpected creative ideas. I encourage you to try out this idea for yourself this week. Observe something in your life, or as you're out and about, then allow yourself to wonder and be curious, and see where it takes you. The Creative Life with Taylor is a production of Lamplight Universe. I'd love for you to join me next time for an inspiring conversation, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Until then, keep creating.